Yeah, if you want to, and then you can get it off the video later. Yeah. Okay, but I want you to get it down. Tex Watson, tell you a little bit about him. He was 24 years old at the time of the murders. Write down what you want, get it later. And if you're not going to write it down, I'll go a little faster. But if you're going to write it down, I'll slow. How do you want to go?
You can go fast.
Okay, I'll just go and then you can get it. Tex Watson.
I want to write because I won't be
Okay,
able to get it.
okay. Tex Watson was 24 years old at the time of the murders. 24. And he committed 80% of the murders at both sites. 80%. That's why it was tricentennial. So Watson was 24 years old at the time of the murders, and he committed 80% of the killings in the two murder sites. Now, you wonder, how the hell does a guy get to this point, right? Well, as a high school teenager in Farmersville, Texas, he led his church group. He was an honor roll student. He excelled in football and basketball and track and field. Write down what you want, but I'm getting the story out, right? So how does a guy get to that point? Well, I'll try to figure it out here. So as a high school teenager in Farmersville, Texas, he leads his church group. He's an honor roll student. He excelled in football, basketball, track and field. After high school, he went to college for 3 years. He went to North Texas State University, and then he transferred to Cal State Los Angeles his last year. So he went to college, you know, he went to college in Texas for 3 years, and then he transferred to Cal State Los Angeles his last year. And what did he get caught up in while he was out there?
Drugs.
What particular movement?
LSD. Oh, what's
He got in the middle of the counterculture movement in California and dropped out of college.
Idiot.
Yeah.
He was
Now
already
this really is crazy. So one night after dropping out of college and getting into the hippie scene, he's driving and he stops to pick up a hitchhiker. Not what you're thinking, and that's all I was thinking. The hitchhiker he picked up was Dennis Wilson. Anybody know who Dennis Wilson is?
An actor.
Close.
A director.
Comedian.
Close.
A writer.
Close.
A singer.
He's a musician, and guess what group he's with?
The Beatles.
The Beach Boys. Ever heard of the Beach Boys?
Yes.
Yeah, so the hitchhiker that Watson picks up turns out to be Dennis Wilson of the musical group The Beach Boys. And Wilson invites Watson back to his mansion where Watson actually lives for a short period of time. So Wilson shows his appreciation to Watson. This is before all this happens, right? And lets him stay with him because he's got no place to stay. I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe he got in a fight with his
Yeah.
girlfriend and she made him walk.
Now, listen to this. Listen to this. Watson met Charles Manson at Wilson's home when Manson was making a serious attempt to become a musician. True story. And Dennis Wilson kind of liked Manson's music. So Wilson invited Manson, before any of this happened, to his house because he kind of liked his music. And that's how Charles Tex Watson met Charles Manson at Wilson's home, Dennis Wilson's home.
Watson met Manson
at Wilson's mansion.
Wilson
That's
liked,
right.
Watson met Manson
Wilson,
at
Wilson
Wilson's
liked
mansion.
Manson. Wilson liked Manson because of his music.
Because he kind of liked Manson's music, and Manson didn't.
Oh,
He had a rough life. We'll talk about, but he was trying to get into music. He wasn't trying to get into murder, but he's trying to get into music. Okay. Now, Manson thought, since Dennis Wilson likes my music, I'll become bigger than the Beatles. This guy was crazy. He thought Wilson was going to make his musical career, and he was going to be more popular than the Beatles.
The Beatles thought they were more popular than Jesus.
Yeah. Well, one night after a party went bad at the Wilson residence, Wilson asked all his guests, "You got to get out of here," including Watson, who then moved where?
With Manson.
To the Spawn Ranch with Manson. And that's where the seed was laid. Okay? So there's a big party at Wilson's house one night. It gets kind of crazy. Wilson says, "Hey, everybody out of here," including Tex Watson, who went with Manson and moved into the Spawn.
Does Wilson, does he ever feel guilty about what happened? Because, how Ruth Payne felt guilty about giving the...
Dennis
job
Wilson
to
wasn't it. He just was off too. I don't know that. Well, so,
Any of these things?
we go through everything's happened, blah, 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 right? Well, Watson goes to prison, and he becomes a born-again Christian. He becomes a born-again Christian. And he even writes a book.
Oh, here we go.
He even writes a book in prison, an autobiography called Will You Die For Me? The man who killed for Charles Manson tells his story. Really pretty interesting, okay? Some interesting facts in here if you want to get in here sometime.
What's he look like?
Will You Die For Me? Charles Manson, here he's right here. Doesn't look much
Manson?
different. No, this is Tex Watson.
I was like, what?
Where's Charles Manson?
Well, we'll get to him.
Oh, he's kinda cute.
Charles
Yeah.
Manson's in the bottom.
We'll get to him, yeah, we'll get to him. Now,
It's only a murder.
here we go. Watson's first parole hearing, remember I said they were up for parole, was November 26, 1976. That was his first or initial parole hearing. So he was in jail from when? 1972 to 1976, 4 years, and he had his first parole hearing. Well, he was denied. And he's been denied 17 times
Oh my gosh.
since.
Why does he keep
Well, it comes up,
Might
you
as
gotta give it a
well.
shot, yeah. His most recent denial came in 2016. His next hearing for parole will be in 2021.
Oh, he's
So he
21
gets one
years
every,
old?
how often?
4 years?
Every 5 years. For the, normal. He's 73 years old today.
What?
He is incarcerated in San Diego, California. Okay, there's your Tex
I
Watson.
wonder how
At
much
this moment in time,
stuff he's.
He's 73 right
Today.
Is he like in isolation?
Today's
Oh,
today's
no.
not his birthday.
I-
Today's not his birthday. Oh,
No,
today,
no, I
like
mean-
in modern day
And
time.
they-
But
to-
he's
right,
still alive.
He's still alive. There you go. He's still alive and he's 73 years old. Okay, let's move on to Patricia Krenwinkel. Patricia Krenwinkel. They all have an interesting story.
They all have interesting movies.
Yes, it's for Watson, that's not
Now,
very.
this is kind of interesting. It's kind of sad. Patricia Krenwinkel was only 21 years old at the time of the murders. And she was at both murder sites. Both. So she was involved in both.
Did anyone go and not kill anybody? Okay.
Okay, now Krenwinkel was born in Los Angeles. She had a very good upbringing. Her father was an insurance executive. They were certainly not short of money. Yeah, but something happened to her when she was... Now listen, here's something that happens, and it happens, I don't know, I can't, we have this happen. What happened when she was 17 that kind of screwed her up?
Boyfriend.
No? Her parents divorced. And she left a very comfortable lifestyle and moved to Alabama with her mother, which was a very unsettling time for her, okay? Now, this is hard to believe, it's true. When she was in Alabama, she went to a Catholic college, and she first thought that she was going to become a nun. That's what her first thought was. But after one semester of studying theology, she decided that wasn't for her. She had an initial career choice of becoming a nun, but that only lasted one semester. Well, she decided she didn't like living with her mother in Alabama, so she moved to California to live with her stepsister, who was a heroin addict.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So she moves to California to live with her stepsister, who was a heroin addict. And guess how she met Charles Manson?
Heroin.
Through her stepsister and drugs. And she was immediately captivated by him. He was a good smoozer. And this gal fell in love with him. I mean, she got infatuated with him and basically captivated by him and how neat he was and fell kind of underneath his spell. He manipulated her. He took advantage of her low self-esteem. He kept telling her how
Did he like
beautiful
her?
she was.
Were they like a couple? Or?
Well, we'll get into that later too. He was a couple of all of them. But anyway, he really made, if you think about it, he took a girl that was really low self-esteem, made her feel special. She really liked the positive attention and became one of his followers. And guess where she moved? Swan Ranch. Now, remember I told you somebody carved the word war in Lino LaBianca? She was the one. She's the one that carved the word war into Lino LaBianca.
God, they didn't like think they were doing something wrong?
Well, they're drugged out weird. okay?
Oh, they were on drugs when
Oh,
they did this?
God, I'm sure, yeah.
Oh.
Well, anyway,
How
Krenwinkel
could you
had,
not be on drugs?
yeah, Krenwinkel had her first parole hearing in 1978. She had her first parole hearing in 1978. Her most recent parole denial was on June 22nd of 2017.
That's Emily's birthday.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Hey. Here's that on here.
Okay. She is presently 71 years old, and she is incarcerated at the California Institution for Women that was made especially for her and her followers, and she has been denied parole 13 times.
So she's been in prison for 50 years? They've all been in
God,
prison?
that's gotta be horrible.
Yeah.
Wait, June 22nd.
So, listen up again. She's 71 years old. She's presently incarcerated in the California Institution for Women. Her last denial of parole was June 22nd, 2017, and she has been denied parole 13 times.
13?
You're like always checking.
Yeah, you almost.
All right, shh, let's get through. I want to get through Susan Atkins before the lady gets here, okay? Susan Atkins, 21 years old at the time of the murders. She was also at both murder scenes. She was born in Los Angeles, California, second of 3 children. Unfortunately for her, she was born to alcoholic parents. So she's born in Los Angeles, California, the second of 3 children born to alcoholic parents. She drops out of high school at 15 when her mother died, and her family, her father simply abandoned the family. So she's basically an orphan at 15, okay? So she drops out of high school at 15 after her mother dies and her father abandons the family. Where she moved to, which she's already in California. She moved to San Francisco and gets involved in the Haight-Ashbury scene as a topless dancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is kind of her life. So she moves to Haight-Ashbury, gets into the counterculture movement, and becomes a topless dancer there. And she meets Charles Manson when she's staying with friends in San Francisco. Liked him, moved to Spawn Ranch, and gave birth to a son. Don't ask me who the daddy was, because it would be hard to tell, okay? So she meets Charles Manson while staying with friends in San Francisco, and then moves to Spawn Ranch, eventually giving birth to a son.
How old was her son?
How old is he? Would he be now?
Like, at the time that she was convicted?
Well, not very old. I mean, I don't know. You know, I think so. She was involved in the she was involved in a murder previous to the Tate LaBianca murders. What she did is she was taken with 2 other family members by Charles Manson to try and secure some money from a man that Manson knew by the name of Gary Hinman. So she and 2 other followers were directed to go to Gary Hinman's place and try to get some money from him for Manson. Manson was there at this one. When Hinman wouldn't give Manson money, Manson slashed his face with a sword and left. Sword. Okay, so Susan Atkins goes with Charles Manson to Gary Hinman's place. They're looking for money. Hinman won't give him any money. Manson slashes his face with a sword.
So he's walking down the street and he's carrying a sword.
And well, I don't know how he did it. Now listen to this. Manson leaves. Atkins and 2 other family members beat Hinman to death. Beat him to death after Manson leaves. Again, Manson walks by, walks out, hands clean of the murder.
So they never found the murders from that?
Well, no, wait a minute.
Wait, she
Now,
was in jail.
Atkins, you don't have to write this down, we gotta get through this, was the family member who bragged about the killings to her cellmate that led to the arrest of the killers, right? Her first parole date was in 1976. Her last parole hearing was 2009. She had been denied parole 13 times.
She got out?
No, kind of. Got out the hard way.
She broke out?
She died.
Oh.
She was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Oh.
She asked for a conditional parole based on her life expectancy. 2009. And she died at that facility. And according to her husband, and I don't know anything about him or what the story was there, her last word whispered to him before she died was amen. But she, I think all of them changed in prison. But anyway, she is one that has passed away, no longer living, Susan Atkins. Okay, when we get back, which won't be until Tuesday, we will talk about Leslie Van Houten, Linda Kasabian, and then we'll also talk about Charles Manson, and then we'll show you a video on the whole thing. Yeah.
Do you think Charles Manson changed the prison?
No.
Same guy?
No, we'll tell you. We're going to tell you all about that. Now, once we get through the Manson murders in the video, then we're going to finish what happened in Vietnam. Okay?
Can I go sit in
We
your...
lost the Vietnam War, and OBJ got voted out. That's how.
LBJ didn't run again.
Yeah.
That's right, huh?
We have the press here. I always feel like I need to leave so you can tell your own story. And you don't have to worry about what you say in front of me, good, bad, or otherwise.
Read about it in the paper.
Yeah. But anyway, you kiddos that didn't go on the trip, you're very welcome to come to me to the guidance office. Or if you want to stay and listen, you're welcome. So let's roll one way or the other. Thank you very much. This is the first half. This is the smaller group. So. All right, now listen, let's not be, stumps in the ground. Let's tell her what's going on. Thank you.